Good evening, everybody. It's the Eight Figured Man here, and tonight I'm going to talk to you a little bit about money, what it is, and where it comes from. Now, a lot of people think that money is this arbitrary thing that has no value and it only exists because it exists in our mind, and or they believe it is, the aftermath of some evil capitalist who sacrificed his oldest virgin daughter for the ability to have power over the masses. It's neither of those things. Money's a very real thing, has a very real origin, has a very real history. And in a nutshell, money began with a barter system. I am farmer Jake, and I raise cows. But I need a pair of shoes. One cow is worth quite a bit more than a pair of shoes. So I'm looking at my cow over here, and I'm thinking, that cow gives me a lot of milk, gives me a lot of cheese, has the potential to give me a lot of milk, a lot of meat, and a lot of bone, which can be used for making tools or jewelry or even medicines in some cases. So that cow has a lot of intrinsic value. A pair of shoes has a little intrinsic value, but not that much. It's not worth a whole cow to me. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take, that cow up to Jake, up the road, Farmer Jake. Farmer Jake grows corn. Corn is fantastic because it has a bunch of small little sections. And I can take that cow to Farmer Jake, and he'll give me several bushels of corn, several baskets full of corn. And then I can go to the shoe cobbler and be like, hey, I will give you a bushel of corn for a pair of shoes. Now, I still have several bushels left, and I can use those bushels to eat. I can eat off that corn for a long time, and at the same time, I can take it to the potato farmer and trade a bushel for several potatoes. Or I can take it to a tool maker and buy a shovel. So I can do all these things now because I've broken that cow up into several pieces of corn. And that corn at that moment becomes currency. It becomes money. Now, there was a problem with this, in that not everybody needed corn. What if I showed up to the shoemaker and he's like, thanks, but I just traded a pair of shoes, to that same farmer, and he gave me a bunch of corn. I don't need any corn for a while. So then you're stuck. You still need a pair of shoes, but you got all this corn. And that's pretty much where coining came in. Metals were still a useful thing, especially, and precious metals not so much useful, but they were pseudo-useful. They were good for aesthetics and jewelry, and they had certain value in themselves. But you could take metal, however, and you could make it into as big or as small an increment as you want it, simply by melting it down and separating it into sections. And so with that, I could take this big old rod of silver, or gold, or iron, or copper, or whatever, and I could, melt off a drop, weigh it out so I knew how much it weighed, and then trade that for whatever I need. And then the next step was, especially when you had a large government, an empire, a kingdom, or whatever, generally the governing agency would say, okay, well, we're going to make this simple, so we always know how much money we're dealing with. We're going to take a piece of gold, we're going to weigh it out, and then we're going to stamp it so that it's flat, and we're going to stamp a seal on it. And that seal, that little picture on that piece of gold, is going to tell me exactly how much that gold weighs. You say it's 8 ounces of gold. We're going to stamp it with a little mark that indicates that it's an 8-ounce gold piece. And that tells you exactly how much gold is there without having to measure, without having to have a scale, everywhere you go to use it, to spend it. They can do that with copper and steel and different valued precious metals. And in that way, you would have bigger and smaller increments built in. So, fast forward to today. We're no longer the Babylonian Empire. Now, I decide that I need $10,000. My car is worth about $10,000, so I go to Joe Blow up the street and I say, give me $10,000 and I'll give you my car. He thinks it's a great idea. He wants a car. I don't want a car anymore. Or I've got another car or something, whatever. He gives me $10,000. Now, he did not just give me $10,000 of something arbitrary and meaningless. He gave me a whole car broken up into 10,000 individual pieces. Now, I can use that $10,000 and break it into a small piece and go buy a pair of Levi jeans. Or maybe not. I don't know. I think Levi jeans cost about a whole car nowadays. But anyway, you can take that $10,000 and break it up and get a cup of coffee, or you know, a pair of pants that aren't Levi's, or you could, you know, buy a meal or pay rent on a house or whatever. Now you have this whole car that is now in all these smaller individual sections, and then you can make those sections big or small as you want by trading other type of currency. I can trade a bunch of ones for 20, 50, or 100, or I can trade one for several pennies, quarters, nickels, dimes, whatever, you know, what have you. And in that way, I have turned this car into a whole bunch of smaller, manageable increments that I can trade for anything up to the value of that car. Now, I really want to get into value, what money's worth, and why it's worth it. But that's a whole other video because that could take several minutes to explain, and I'm trying to keep these videos short as possible. But anyway, thank you for watching, and my next video will be on money value.